disclaimers before we get started. You'll see some cameras around the room. One, we're passionate about this subject that we're going to talk to you about today, but Zach, Carlotta, and I are also receiving a grade for this in the class that we're taking. So please make sure you pay attention and participate, because we don't want to get a 0 on the assignment. We don't want to have to retake the assignment, and we don't want to be graded down on behavior on the assignment. So please, if you could help us with that, we appreciate that today. Obviously, I think you guys know who we are. I'm Ryan. This is Zach. Okay. And what we are going to do today is talk about grading practices with you guys. Obviously, there is a shift going on in education in relation to grading practices. We want to see if Green Run can get ahead of it, be a part of it, and see where we're going. And our purpose today is to gather some data to determine where Green Run stands in relation to these grading practices. So we're going to put our goals up on the screen right here.
Oh, it's a puppy. I like
Okay,
that.
so our goal is to facilitate the PLP today to move these grading practices from a discussion, which we feel we've been doing now for about a year or longer, with grading practices, and move them in a different direction to actually maybe doing some things. So we want to present you with various practical grading solutions today, discuss the ethical implications of grading practices, and weigh the positive and negatives associated with grading strategies. School's goal.
All right, and our school goal is to gather data in preparation for designing a school-wide grading policy that, of course, aligns with what the division is trying to do. So that's going to be our school's goal.
Great. Sure. So ultimately today, our goal is to take a look at these grading practices and see if there's any alignment here at the school. Obviously, some of us are already doing some of these practices, but there may be some new ideas out there too that we'll present to you today. So just to give you an idea of grading practices at our school, some of you may have seen a video of this.
Oh, it's okay. I will show you, see?
Now there are students at the top of the stairs,
We'll show her again.
and before them is a summit that they may fall down, or they may not even be willing to try to go down those stairs without some help. Now that's the role of grading. The idea to go and guide the students along the process of learning, and make sure that we revisit that student over and over again and provide them with reflection and help and assistance on making their way down until we finally are able to master climbing stairs. And it takes a lot of work. A lot of redos and a lot of retakes. Finally starts moving in the direction that we want them to go.
Oh, sweet. Gotcha. Yay! You're all down. Come
A little bit further until finally that goal is done. Or, your grading practices may look like this. The student's thinking about it, they're about to complete the task, and rather than checking in with them to make sure they know what they're doing, they're shoving it. Hoping that maybe they're ready to accomplish that task, and certainly not knowing if they're able to master that idea. So, just to start off on that humorous note, it's going to move us today to think about what our grading practices look like. Are we providing feedback? Are we modeling certain behaviors like responsibility and organization for our students? Are we checking in with them throughout a unit to make sure that they understand what they're doing? Are we looking for mastery or are we looking for behavior? And can the students produce the results we're looking for? In front of you, you have an affinity matrix. This should look familiar because this is something that we did together during in-service week with the PBIS.
No, but I taught him how to
I got it
do
right,
it,
right,
yes.
Carmi?
Very
I made
good.
it without your help. Okay, so in front of you, several of you, all of you should have red and green stickers, and this activity is called red light, green light. And what we'd like for you to do is review some of the grading strategies on this affinity matrix. And what you're going to do with your green stickers, you're going to take that green sticker and place it next to a grading practice that you agree with that you already use or that you might be interested in implementing in the near future. The red stickers, the red light, is going to be some practice that you disagree with or a practice that you are going to resist tooth and nail of implementing in your classroom. So green light next to things that you agree with or would like to implement, and red light next to things that you disagree with or have no interest in using. Have one green sticker. One. And if you completely disagree with one wholeheartedly, you can place all the red stickers next to that one and all the green stickers next to it. So wherever you want to place them.
So green means you would do that.
Yeah, when it gets to the end of the 9 weeks, I don't, whole page, or just, you're doing the whole page.
Whole page. Whole page.
Yeah, but I'm being, what do you call it, judicious with my stickers.
And again, if there's some, you can use all your dots on one category if you want. So if you're struggling, you can place all the red dots on one that you just completely disagree with.
See, that's iron.
Already I see some patterns emerging, but also I see a lot of differences between our groups, which is really showing you we've got some differentiated ideas about grading practice.
Even if they did poorly, they take it down.
So, this one's really hard because I don't like the way you
Yeah,
worded it.
yeah, I will cut.
That's what we have
this
called
one.
read assessments in English.
Half a red.
I don't know if that's.
You're definitely thinking outside the box. Yeah.
With half a green. Because it depends on what it is and what I've asked them to do. It's red for the top.
So Carmen ripped 1.5 and half.
Did you disagree with the wording of it?
Well, participation, organization, homework, and classwork all have different functions for me.
Okay.
So there are things that I will include in a grade, and there are things that I will not include in a grade. They all have different.
I'm sorry. It's making you hungry.
I think a lot of us are starting to wrap up where we're placing our stickers, which is really awesome. Certainly some good conversation, maybe explaining why we placed red stickers at some tables and green at others. But there are some glaring differences that I'm already noticing between some of them. For instance, this group has no stickers next to the extra credit opportunity category. However, this group over here has 3 and you have 2. So already we're starting to think maybe extra credit opportunities vary between our subjects. Maybe it serves a different purpose or function. Who knows? Record missed work as a 50. This sucker is lit up red like a Christmas tree. This group is completely resistant to doing that. No work, no credit. This group over here, similar pattern. However, this group over here put a green light next to no work equals a 50. So already we can see through the conversations that we conducted last year, the beginning of this year, this activity, that we all seem to be on different pages when it comes to grading practices. And it's going to be our goal to try and get you to implement some of these ideas, maybe try and change your perspective to kind of get your feet wet before schools move forward in some of these changes. Okay. So today what we're going to do after this activity, which is great data for us to look at, maybe some conversation starters, what we're going to do is we're going to move into topics for discussion at our tables. Now each of us is going to lead one of your groups. And in this group, we've got some sentence starters, some scenarios to go through, to start talking about mastery versus behavior, which is my group, the no zero policy, which is Carlotta's group, and penalizing late work, which is Ryan's group. So this is the direction that we're going to move forward in. We're going to certainly use this as a conversation piece at each of our tables, but also some of those sentence starter activities. So, if you're ready, you guys ready? All right, let's start leading that conversation.
Okay, thank you for participating in those group discussions. We probably have a lot to work from going forward on where you guys stand as a sample size of our faculty, and hopefully we can come up with some things that may help you and help some other teachers in our building. We just have a couple of things left that we would like to do with you today. Should take just a minute, but Zach's going to explain the next piece of the iPad in front of you is what I would like you to open up at this time and log, or just get onto the page that's already should be pulled up for you on the iPad.
So one thing that we wanted to do is we wanted to see, based on your feedback just out the gate with the affinity matrix, about things that you support or don't support, in reality, we wanted to see, give you some scenarios to question whether or not you believe that some of these practices are ethical or unethical. And what we want to do is we want to compare the initial input that you used on the affinity matrix and the results that we see from the standpoint of grading practices in your mind. Is this an ethical scenario, something that I would do or agree with? Or is this something that I would never do in my profession? So it's giving us two pieces of data to take a look at. And in a minute, we can start that, please. So one of the first questions that it should ask
Is your name.
It won't display your name. I haven't chosen that to come up. But what it will give us an idea of, as a group, how we must believe something to be ethical or unethical with these scenarios. So the first thing we want you to do is type in your name and click next or done, and then the scenarios go through. You'll see when you log in. And I'll go ahead and minimize that one. You guys do that. So we've got Robin, Katie, Coker, Sorrow, Cherry, Matthew, Clausen, Keo, Sam, is that everything?
No, one more.
And we can just keep going, right?
Just keep
Yeah,
going.
keep going and the results come up.
I look over your shoulder. I'd like
Yeah.
to check your
That's
answers
fine.
just to see
That's
what
fine,
yours-
but this is an interesting one. We use surprise test items on assessments that are not in the study guide. Who said I gave them the study guide?
You said you could put half dots on the matrix.
I did. It's my matrix.
She likes to be the rebel.
These are worded in such a way that
I
I have
know.
to say a certain answer that you might not always agree with.
I think it's okay. It's not best practice, but it's okay.
It's kind of, that's, I don't like the word ethic, the word ethical.
Yeah,
Because when I think of ethics, I think of.
yeah, I think of Enron. I think that's wrong. Address weaknesses. Opportunity areas. Everybody has
Can we go back and change our answers? Well, what if I wanted to think about it again?
That's not, that's,
Yes.
Figure out where you're going to
Yeah, I think it's the one that I just answered, and I think I just want to go back and think about it a little bit more. That's what I'm saying, they're very picky.
I think you should complain to the creator.
Like,
I mean, some of these things, it's like, yeah, that's ethical, but I'm not gonna do it. That's why some of these are leading questions, and it's like, well,
We're not gonna talk about the validity of this survey.
I just got the affinity matrix. We'll talk about validity later.
Carlotta.
What's interesting about the survey, by the way, this was actually done by a university,
yeah, it doesn't have to have
teaching
20
college,
minutes.
to the students that they were getting ready to send out into the teaching workforce, and from faculty members that were in high schools, elementary and middle schools around the university. So don't blame the validity on me, I just got stole the survey questions.
So you may be able to use this as a comparative study.
There's always a lot of
Us versus them.
Yes, when you're done, go ahead and click log out. And if you want, this is a perfect tool, by the way, just as a quick plug for Socrates. This is an awesome tool to use in your classroom. It's very intuitive. When you're adding answers and questions, you can turn review games. You get immediate feedback. My AP students just took their first test, and every time they got the question wrong, it informed them what the correct answer was. So they really like that immediate feedback tool. However, 3 of them really hated it because
They
they
did
were
so
really
poorly.
disappointed by the end of the test.
Yeah, just close it. You can just close them or put the iPads down when you're done.
So, let me see.
Well, you take that as you will.
Still has your name. To conceal the identities of the kids.
I don't, we don't remember the questions.
I know, I don't remember.
I'll send you the report to see what it was, but really what I wanted to do, just as a personal reflection on some of these ideas, ethical versus unethical, I wanted to show you the results that were pulled from that report, just as a comparative piece of data for you and your mentality, and that is the idea of weighting homework and determining report grades. 57% of the participants said that that was an ethical practice.
Is that us?
No, this is the survey that was conducted by the university.
Okay,
But
all
I
right.
am curious, and I will listen to the results
Okay.
of what we said. 43% said unethical. That's a pretty close margin, I think. Almost a half division there with weighting homework. Giving a student A if they mastered the course objectives but did not complete all the homework. 37% said ethical, but a resounding 63% said that that was unethical. Sometimes I think in our brains we tend to think things of being right and wrong, but when it comes to practice, it comes out in a different way. Using surprise test items that are not in the study guide. I heard a lot of harumphs about this one. 34% said that that was an ethical practice. 66% said that that was an unethical practice, which I thought was kind of interesting too. Only addressing student strengths and feedback, 41% ethical, 59% unethical. This was actually targeted, really the feedback they gave was on elementary school teachers and how they wanted to avoid the negative to prevent hurting the self-esteem of the child.
We don't hurt them.
You did this well, but lowering a report card grade for disruptive behavior as unethical.
Dream crushers.
All right, in our brains, 85% agree that that was an unethical practice. However, I would be curious to see in reality how many of them did lower a student's report card grade.
My only comment about that, is that sometimes the student's grade is lowered and they are a disruptive student, but their grade is lowered because they're being so disruptive that they're not doing their work. You see what I mean? So that's why I think when I did that one, I said ethical, because I'm like, well, if you're too busy disrupting class to do any work, of course your grade is going to be lower.
Yeah, but that's not.
You know what I mean?
She's saying.
Well, then up to 90%, or whatever.
You're saying because a
I
student's
told you I wanted to go back
disruptive,
and
it's naturally going to reflect or manifest itself in
Right.
the grade.
Yeah.
However, I'm
You're seeing
curious
her
of-
cause and effect.
I don't
Right,
think
and that
anyone's
was the
going
same
to admit it,
thing
and
with
I
this-
wouldn't want you to on camera. But I'm sure at the end of the year, that student who has this rounding up 62.3 or 63.4, the idea of just flipping that grade to a pass or fail because of that student's behavior. Some of you are diehard thinking that's unethical and it's wrong.
I never lower students or.
And that's fine.
Never. They get what they get. I may not help them,
Right.
but I'm
On
not.
the flip side, raising a grade, right? Raising a grade. Considering student effort when determining grades is ethical, 85% of the people said yes, and the student worked very hard, even if they didn't master the concepts. Lowering a grade for late work as being an ethical practice. 86% of people agreed with that statement, which speaks to the mastery versus behavior. The idea of, are we here to teach them content? Are we here to teach them responsibility? Or are we here to do both at the same time? What's our role as a professional, especially when it comes to our grading practices? So these are the questions we need to ask ourselves. And a lot of it was posed in a conference that we went to. I'm sure your team leaders told you we went to a conference by Rick Wormley, a professional who's investigated grading practices. We went to Richmond a few weeks ago. But here's some of the questions that were posed. Am I assessing content standards, or am I assessing my students' behavior? Is a student getting A's on my tests and quizzes and not doing homework? Easy way to do that is to look at your grade book and count to see where the zeros are. And should the student suffer because they've not been doing the homework, feeling that there's no need for them to practice at home when they can come to class and get an A on all the assessments to begin with? That's a divisive issue. Second question, are my grading practices reflecting student understanding or my own personal philosophies? Well, when I was in school, I had 10% deducted every day because I turned the assignment in late. That should go with the kid too.
I didn't do homework.
I never got to do retakes and redos. I don't think that that's a fair practice. Should my grades be used to teach responsibility, or should I be using another means to teach responsibility? Should I be assigning academic detentions instead of slapping a 50 on people? Should I be calling home, which many of us already do? Should I be offering more reflection on the pieces? Should I be weighting homework or not weighting homework, but still keeping track of it to monitor the behavior? We have a lot of suggested strategies for you to implement between the three of us, and hopefully that'll be something that you carry over over this next semester.
Well, we would, Carla.
Are we wrapping up? Okay, we're done. All right, so in an effort to save time, you're gonna receive a follow-up email from us, with strategies and resources for your use. Please ensure that you respond to the email so that you'll get credit for coming today. So on behalf of Zach, myself, and Brian, I wanna thank you for coming out and supporting us in our professional endeavor, and hopefully we can depend on you in the future. Don't know about all that.
If you are interested in looking at some of the strategies on mastery versus behavior, a practical solution to dealing with that topic in your grade book, I have information relating to standards-based grading practices, replacing formative and summative assessments, and last but not least, feedback and non-reading of a homework policy. I've got a bunch of content that you're more than welcome to take, and part of our exit ticket will be coming to you, and it will ask you to choose one new strategy. Not necessarily one that you're already implementing, which again, some of us are way ahead of other schools in terms of our grading practices. But we ask that you choose one new grading policy to test drive, to see if it works, to see if it impacts your students' grades, and then to reflect on it. And that will, in the end, earn you a second point towards PLP. So the first is by coming here today and filling out a reflection, talking about how your perspective might have changed. And the second will be a follow-up session offered later in November, and that'll be coming back together to see how your grading practice, the one that you chose to implement, is working out for you in that grade book.
Or it can simply be, has your thoughts changed on any of the topics that were discussed today? You can let us know where you are in that thinking process and how your thoughts have changed in relation to that. In addition, with the feedback email that we're going to send, we will include some of the resources that we use to put together this session. So if you want more information on the topics, you can go to those and hopefully use those. Thank you.
Thank you.